new episode of Melt. I'm Ritvika Gupta reporting from my home. Continuing our coverage from Zee MELT 2020, this week we'll be presenting highlights from a session by Adam Ferrier, founder and consumer psychologist at Thinkerbell, Australia. Adam is one of the leading consumer psychologists in Australia, a brand strategist, and an authority on behavioral economics. His session at Zee MELT was titled, "Stop Listening to the Consumer, They Don't Really Care." Adam will take us through what marketing science suggests about the role of customer insights and how they can build or destroy a brand. Let's get ready to melt with Adam Ferrier.
My background is I'm a clinical psychologist. I got into advertising kind of late. I got into marketing sciences and behavioural sciences very early on in my career in advertising and marketing. And I've always been fascinated by what marketing sciences says we should do versus what people in advertising say we should do. And those two things are often very, very different. So I wouldn't mind doing a quick test with all of you. I'd like you to imagine that you are an occasional consumer of some of these brands. So there should be a brand or two there that everyone recognises. Just imagine you're an occasional consumer of that brand. You buy it every so often. The first question I have for you is would you like to see significantly more advertising from these brands? Yes or no? Let's think about it. You saw those brands. Do you want to see a lot more advertising in your life from those brands? Question 2. Would you like to spend more of your time on those brands' websites and follow them more closely on social media? Yes or no? You're an occasional user of those brands. Do you want to really follow them and get into the website? Question 3. Would you like these brands to form stronger associations in your mind? Now, unless you are really off the charts weird, you'd have said no to all of those questions. So who said this? I really want to see more of their advertising and spend more of my time interacting with those brands online. No one. No one says that because that's not how we think. And we want brands to be in our lives when we want them and then to disappear and not be thought of again. Or as Malcolm Gladwell said, if you ask the consumer what they really wanted, they'd answer, "I just want to be left alone." And so that quote is from Malcolm when I had dinner with him and a few CMOs from around the world, and we all got together and had a big dinner, and the CMO of Coca-Cola said, "Malcolm, what do you think people really want from Coca-Cola?" And he looked at her and he just said, "I think they just want to be left alone." And that he said that around 10 years ago, and that thought has really stayed with me because it's kind of true, right? You don't want to see more advertising. You don't want to have to get lost in this web experience and see the brands you like kind of constantly in your social feeds. It's not true. So, and the issue with that is it's the directly opposite of how brands grow. This is a picture of Byron Sharp. Byron Sharp is probably the world's leading marketing scientist and wrote the book called How Brands Grow. He's from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, which is the leading marketing sciences institute around the world. And his fundamental quote about how brands grow, any type of brand, is no marketing activity, including innovation, should be seen as a goal in itself. Its goal is to hold on to or improve mental and physical availability, which means that a brand's job, the more it gets stuck in people's head, the more it's always in people's head, the more they're always thinking about it, the more closer it is around them, then the more that brand is going to grow. That's the opposite of what Malcolm Gladwell said that people want from brands. They just want to be left alone. So how do we reconcile that? And in reconciling that, how do we stop this obsession with customer obsession? So wherever I go, my clients always say to me, "We're customer obsessed. We want to put the customer at the heart of a business." Now, if you really did that, your business would go bankrupt. More than likely, you wouldn't have a business. If you did what was right purely for the customer, then you'd have to ask yourself whether you have a business there at all. So, and just to make this point, there's a few marketers I know who are brave enough to put the customer last. So they put their own brand before they put the customer's welfare at heart, and those brands do really, really well. Perhaps the least customer-centric brand in the world is Ikea. So Ikea only have 1 or 2 stores per city in the world. So you go to a city, they might have 1 store, very likely, at the very most, they'll have 2 stores. But if you want to go to Ikea, chances are you've got at least a 30, 40 hours, hour and a half's drive to get to an Ikea shop. That's not very customer centric. When you get to the Ikea shop, what you have to do then is walk through is a really long kind of loop, orchestrated loop around the store. It takes you about 20 minutes to walk through, 20 minutes to an hour to walk through the store. And so that's a heat map of how people actually kind of navigate their way through an Ikea store. Again, that's not very customer centric. The customer centric store would have everything laid out so you could easily go to whatever thing you want. It wouldn't make you walk past every single item and every single showroom in the entire store. But what that tends to happen is it creates a sense of delayed gratification. You've invested a lot of time and effort going out to Ikea, then you spend a lot of time and effort going all around this maze. You then end up buying a whole lot of stuff. And once you've bought it, you then have to kind of build the bloody thing yourself. So you have to take it home and actually build the bookcase or whatever it is that you bought. So Ikea are the grand masters of something called the effort paradox. And the effort paradox is the more effort you put into something, the more you're going to value it. And so this has been studied by somebody called Professor Michael Norton extensively from Harvard Business School. And people here would have heard of the Ikea effect. But the point of this presentation, I just want to put forward that all of these innovations are not customer-centric, they're brand-centric. And they're brand-centric because they're asking you, the customer, to put effort into Ikea. Another brand that doesn't care about the customer at all, and puts the customer last, I should say, is Apple. So Apple have created a very, very difficult product ecosystem to navigate and to constantly update. And look, if you just look around me at the moment, I've got my Apple cords all over the place. My screen's on the blink for some reason and kind of keeps on flashing. I have ridiculous adapters like this that I have to constantly update. The whole thing's a mess. And then if I try to pay for anything, I get surprised on my bills because I can't quite work out what I'm paying for Apple Pay. I can't quite work out or the payment systems and so forth, and they have extreme inbuilt obsolescence. So these guys are the grand masters of hooking me into this ecosystem of products that I have to constantly update so one matches with the other, but then things are constantly going on the blink and running out of battery life, so I have to keep on updating them. And so I'm in this kind of sucked into this Apple vortex that I can't get out of. So they're creating barriers to exit. So 3 reasons why listening to the customer is bad. Number 1, we've all heard the quote, if you ask consumers what they wanted, they'll just say a faster horse. And then Ogilvy had the beautiful quote, people don't think what they feel, they don't say what they think, and they don't do what they say. It's very, very hard, number 1, to get the truth out of a consumer as to what they really want. Consumers, humans, us, we're very, very bad at projecting forward and guessing how we're going to behave in the future. And we're even worse at projecting back and rationalising or articulating why we behaved in the past. So if you run a focus group, somebody once said to me, and I love this quote, the only thing that focus groups are good for is for designing focus group rooms. So run a focus group, ask people what they think of this room, and they think, oh, enough light in here? Yeah, the chair's comfy? Yeah, the chair's comfy. What do you think of the food? Oh, the food's pretty nice. We're good at understanding and articulating things directly around us, but, we're not good at answering questions. Will you buy this brand in the future? Will this change your preferences? Why did you do that, 2 years ago or 1 week ago? We're terrible at projecting forward and terrible at projecting back. We're pretty good, actually not very good, we're okay at tight contextual questions. So the first reason why asking the consumer or basing your brand on consumer insight or listening to the customer too much The first reason why it's bad is because consumers don't know. The second reason why listening to the customer too much is bad, and this is the really interesting one, is because consumers want the category. They don't want your brand. So this is how things work most of the time. Most of the time, most people don't care about your brand. They're just going about their day. Then there's a trigger, and the trigger is for your category. It's not for your particular brand. So I'm going about my day, and the trigger is the sun's hot and I feel thirsty. So what tends to happen then is a consideration set. A whole bunch of brands goes straight into the person's mind, and they have to decide what brand they want to buy. And that is the stage called active consideration. So I passively don't care about brand age, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm thirsty, brands appear in my head. I have to actively choose one, and I choose C because it offers me more value. And then ideally there's a retention stage after that where I kind of repurchase again. And so the more you listen to the customer, the more you're going to listen to the trigger or the category entry point. And again, that makes it harder to differentiate yourself from other people because everybody is going to try to meet the customer entry need. So passive consideration, I don't care about nappies. I've never bought nappies in my life. I hit the stage of about 40 and or 30 or whatever it is, and then I have a baby. And when I'm at the hospital or at home, the baby's been born, and then I have to think, oh my gosh, what nappies am I going to put on my baby's bum? And so in Australia, we have at least there's 3 different types of nappies I could buy. I could buy thank you nappies, baby love nappies, or Huggies nappies. So really kind of good environmental nappies, really cheap ones, or the kind of mainstream plasticky nappies called Huggies. I quickly do some active consideration. I decide to put the Huggies nappies on my kid's bum and have a good experience with that. And so therefore I keep on using Huggies. So the trigger was for nappies. And then because Huggies have been advertising at me for 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is, in that passive consideration stage, they're the brand I love, they're the brands I trust. And so that's the brand I end up choosing and put on my baby's bum. And what that tends to do is it tends to lead to a category generic focus. So in Australia, we have both of our kind of key banks promising fast and easy payments because that's what people want from their banking. Or we have both of our supermarkets having fast and easy payments because that's what consumers say they want from their supermarkets. So ultimately, distinctiveness is for brands who have given up on differentiation. And you're going to give up on differentiation if you constantly listen to the customer, because the customer is going to tell you what the category need is, not what their individual need is for their particular brand. It's too nuanced. And so then all you end up with is different colours for the main brands. The third reason why listening to the customer is a bad idea is because consumers want precise communications. So I mentioned this before, that they don't want any wastage comms. They don't want you to communicate to them when you don't need their brand. They want you to communicate when and where exactly when they are. I'm thirsty. I want you to communicate to me. Tell me about your brand. Or I need to look something up online. I want to know about Google now, or whatever it is. So we have very, very. They want people to communicate only where and when they want to be communicated to. But online or off, it's too late to build a brand at point of sale. So if you only try to communicate at the point or at the trigger of when somebody wants the category and what had the needs arise, it's too late to build a brand. So like on that Huggies example I've just given you, Huggies advertised to me for 40 years before I had a child. And then it was that 40 years of advertising that made them feel safe to me and trusted. And that's the reason why I bought them. If Huggies had tried to advertise to me at that point, and that was the first time they had advertised to me, it's just not enough time to build trust for me for that particular brand. And so all of that wasted advertising that Huggies did for all of those years is what ultimately got me to choose Huggies over any other nappy. So you cannot communicate where and when people want you to communicate them to and expect that to build a brand. And indeed, that's what we see a lot of with with lots of marketing these days. It's so pointed. There's so little wastage that we're seeing brands die by kind of getting into this efficiency death spiral, if you like, of constantly trying to target people just where and when they want to be targeted, and it's shit. So consumers want efficiency. So if you do all your customer journey mapping, your human-centered design, all of that kind of crap, it's going to say whatever the category is consumers want no roadblocks. They just want to get your brand in and out of their lives as efficiently and as quickly as possible. And I liken this consumer journey mapping or human-centered design to filling in potholes on a road with post-it notes. It makes the road smoother, and you can just travel along the road smoother and get in and out really quickly. But all of that does is create efficiency. And then you see things like this. And these are some lovely examples of things getting more and more efficient, so which is not good. So great CX UX book on web usability called Don't Make Me Think, getting people to slide in and out of consciousness. We see customer feedback tackling all of these different kind of technology brands and looking at their logos and their design over time. That was Google, Airbnb, Spotify, and Pinterest logo when they started. That's their logos now. Same thing for all those luxury brands. Beautiful brands with lots of kind of interesting kind of nuance to them, and they all kind of get all the rough edges beaten off them, and they all start to look generic and all the same. Because consumers want Teflon brands. They want brands to slide in and out of their lives, and wonder, charm, humour, and stickiness will come from understanding what the brand can deliver, not what the customer wants or needs. So if you ask the customer what they want, they'll say, I just want that brand in and out of my life really quickly, use it really simply. But that's not necessarily how we create mental and physical availability and stick in people's minds. So the solution is what we call BX before EX before CX. Or brand experience before employee experience before customer experience. Understand what the brand stands for. Spend time doing that. Spend time understanding how that brand expresses itself across anything that brand wants to do. Once you understand that, then understand what the employee experience is like. What's it like to be a part of a brand that expresses themselves like that? And make sure employees know that, and then they can also express the brand in the same way. Then once you understand those two things, then you can understand the consumer, what the consumer needs are, and so on. And you can express your brand to fit that need, not the other way around. And it's super important. So BX before EX before CX. The first thing I want to talk about is the fact that I've spoken about the need that customers have is for the category, not for your particular brand. So if you can make your brand the category, then everything I've said is kind of superfluous. And so very few brands can do this. But a really, really strong foundation to build a brand from is to build a category, not a brand. So if you can create an entirely new category, then you're going to be able to, when the category need occurs, that's you and only you. So therefore you're differentiated and you're a strong brand. Another thing you can do is at least dent it. And dent it in some way. So in Australia, there's a really good toilet paper brand called Who Gives a Crap, a subscription toilet-based brand. It's now gone global. You may have heard of it. And Who Gives a Crap, you buy your toilet paper on subscription is one thing. The second thing is they use 50% of all of their profits go to building clean toilets in developing countries, which is the second good thing. But the third thing is the toilet paper looks really, really cool. It's the only designer-led toilet paper I've ever heard of. And so people who buy Who Gives a Crap actually pile it up and display their toilet paper nicely. And so although there's nothing rationally all that different about their toilet paper versus anybody else's, because they've designed it so well, they've dented that category to make it the only designer-led toilet paper in the world. Strong BX means firing the CEO. So if you've got a CEO who doesn't understand brand, then the best thing to do is to ask them to leave. So brand is the most important thing on the P&L, and it should be seen as everything the CEO does. That's what their job is. Their job is to look after the brand. So the most pure example of this is Steve Jobs. That's Steve Jobs there picking up an Effie Grand Prix Effie with his with the chief creative officer of his agency, TWA, which is Lee Clow. And he used to call Lee every Monday, and they used to have a chat about the advertising, the communications, about the brand. And that's the CEO and executive creative director catching up one-on-one once a week. And I don't know how often that happens around the world, but I'm guessing not that often. So you don't want to have a chief executive officer, you want to have a chief brand officer. And that chief brand officer controls the entire brand, and the entire brand is the entire company. Related to that is try not to have a marketing department either. So if you have a marketing department, it means somehow the organization doesn't think that everything that organization does is marketing. This is especially true with digital or app-based brands, or Silicon Valley in general. So most developers kind of think, I've got this thing over here, and now I need to market it to the world or promote it in some way. And so they have a marketing department who does that. But having no marketing department means everybody gets the whole thing is marketing, and the whole thing is the brand. I have a good friend, and he's an investor. He's a early stage investor in a lot of companies, and you'll never invest in a company that's got a marketing department, because he believes that if I have a marketing department, it means they don't get marketing. And I love that philosophy. So if you do have a marketing department, then the marketing department's job is to make sure that everyone gets it, everyone's in the marketing department. If you don't have a marketing department, you have to be brand led, which means your CEO needs to be the chief brand officer. So that's good if you can do that. And then the final thing I mentioned before is a strong brand experience means employee experience before customer experience. And so there's two very famous people who are very big advocates of this. The first one's Sir Richard Branson. So he believes always that the employees have to get the brand before the customers do, and is very, very big on that. And the second one is Professor Mark Ritson. And Mark Ritson says it slightly differently, that he just says you should not have an employee value proposition and a customer value proposition. Those two things should be one thing and the same. And I totally agree with both of those people. It should be one and the same thing, but employees need to get it, and then the customers.
And that was Adam Ferrier explaining why businesses need to be brand-centric and not consumer-centric. You can watch the full session and all other replays on zeemelt.com. The VOD is available till 3rd November 2020. Now let's take a look at the MELT cheat sheet. Marketers need to be brave enough to stop customer obsession. Brands need to be category creators. Strong brand experience means employee experience before customer experience. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of MELT. Do follow us on social media. Our handle is Ready2Melt. You can also stay informed on what's happening in the world of advertising and marketing with our daily MELT update on our website, ready2melt.com. And I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Goodbye.